convene the meeting of the Board of Education in the Salt Lake City School District for June 21st, 2016. This is our annual planning session.
You can still pick up.
But this is Superintendent Mikkel Wither's last board meeting where he is going to be present with us as the superintendent of schools. So Mikkel, we have a couple of things to present to you. So you may have to do your board member with this. Thank you, Superintendent. We're now at the consent agenda portion of the meeting, and I would entertain a motion.
I move we accept the consent agenda of June 21st, 2016, including the purchasing report, tentative agreement with classified employees, and 2016-2017 salary schedules.
I'll second. Any brief questions or discussion that needs to happen?
I have a clarifying question.
Yes.
On the salary schedule number 4, where it shows on there like the associate superintendent, chief office executive director, chief officer, finance director, this one differs from the one that we got back in November. There was an assistant superintendent. So like Kathleen Christie in that November board meeting, November 17, when we approved the HR report, she just went from an assistant superintendent, and we approved her staying as an assistant superintendent, and the salary schedule we got at that time had assistant superintendent. So my question is, there a reason why that was dropped from here? Or?
There wasn't anybody that was on that lane, and that's why it was dropped. Kathleen Christie was not on that lane. She was on the executive director, chief officer lane.
Why did we approve? Why did she come up on the HR report as an assistant superintendent and got moved to that?
It's a title. That was a title, but she has never been on that lane.
She requested that title years ago, Michael, but we also talked in that meeting about what the real title was, and that she, if you'll remember on that draft, she elected to have assistant superintendent / chief, I think, equity officer, so that both titles were there.
So titles that people get necessarily won't match then the salary schedule?
Didn't say that. You asked about a specific person and what had occurred for that specific person.
No, I asked you a separate question right now.
Okay.
I said, so do you want me to tell you again the question?
No, the titles are by lane. You heard the explanation of when you remove a lane because there are no people on it. With those titles, all that is making sure that your salary schedule is accurate.
Okay, so my question is that titles are going to match the salary schedule. Is that what I'm hearing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to take one step back, when we looked at, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Janet, but when we looked at salary schedules, the goal here is to make sure that, number one, the board approves the salary schedule every year after the terms are reached. And number two, that they are consistent throughout the year and not change during the year. And that has happened in the past. It's also been true that with that particular lane, there were people who were called associates who were nevertheless paid on that lane that was labeled assistant. And that was one of the confusing pieces that we wanted to make sure was no longer a problem with our salaries.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but here, so I never had seen the assistant superintendent on a salary schedule, and then in the end of October we got a salary schedule that had it on there, and then in November we approved a job. You know, Kathleen Christie went from assistant superintendent, so then I was just asking if it's not on here, but then she's on here as a, Janet, you said as a chief officer or executive director?
She's in, there's 2 chief officer lanes.
Mm-hmm.
There's 1 chief officer executive director, 1 chief officer financial director.
Okay.
So she is on the chief officer executive director lane.
Okay. So I'm just requesting then in the future that if that's the lane, then we should, the HR report should match that.
Okay.
I think that would just clarify things or keep things accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as moved, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Thank you. Consent agenda is accepted. And we'll move on to our study topics. beginning with the Student Achievement Plan goals and priorities for 2016.